21 years ago, something happened that changed me forever. One event. And it didn't only change me, but it changed the country we live in. What is up, you heathens and demons, you beautiful, blasphemous people? Welcome back to The Raging Atheist. I'm your boy, Nakasuchi, and today we're going to have a very serious conversation. Today I'm going to take you inside the day that I stopped being homophobic. The day that I changed and started seeing human beings as human beings. The day that I overcame fears so I wouldn't become the hatred that I was seeing. We're going to talk about the day, the time that Mathew Shepard died.
It was here on the evening of October 7th, 1998, that a young cyclist spotted something strange leaning against a fence at the end of a dusty road.
He saw what he had initially thought was a scarecrow from, Halloween coming up tied to a fence. And he realized that it was a human being and ran to a home to call to get some assistance.
Now, this period of my life, I was more progressive. I had left conservatism behind. I had left racism behind. But one thing that I kept with me was homophobia. One thing I took with me when I started to become a liberal was that homophobia, was that fear of gay people, the fear of what I didn't understand because I was a heterosexual man. And I would use words that I despise today. And I would demonize them. And I wouldn't be friends with them. And I worked in a restaurant. I worked in a restaurant that had several gay men. And one in particular had picked up on my homophobia. His name was Matt, ironically. And he messed with me, and even though I didn't like him, I respected that he would mess with me about it. He was always kind of cool about it and just accepted me that I was just this bigoted dude and he would fuck with me. But that would change on October 8th that year, I believe it was, just going by the timeline. When I walked into work, Matt wasn't as accepting. In fact, Matt and the other two gay dudes that were out, they were in tears and they were hysterical and they couldn't work. And before he left, Matt looked at me with rage and called me a homophobe, called me names. And I couldn't understand why he did that. I mean, I got enraged. I was gonna quit my job. But the manager explained to me that a young man named Mathew Shepard had just been murdered, and it was making national news. And I never watched the news back then. I was more interested in partying and drinking and hooking up with girls. So I went home and I began to watch the news.
Sheriff's Lieutenant Rob Debris arrived just as the victim was being taken to the hospital.
There were still some parts of the rope that had to be cut free of him. A large pool of blood where his head had been laying.
The blood spatters throughout the area just gave nothing but signs of a vicious attack.
A University of Wyoming ID card found in the dirt identified the young man as freshman Mathew Wayne Shepard. Shepard's wallet was gone, and so were his shoes.
I became engrossed with this story. I was just shocked at the brutality of it. Now, the only time I'd ever really experienced homophobic violence, because I was never the type of homophobe that wanted to hurt gay people for being gay. I just didn't like them and I feared them. But the only time I had ever been exposed to homophobic violence was in a Stephen King novel, The It. But this really touched me because I could not wish this on any human being. Even if I feared them, even if I couldn't understand them, even if I didn't like them, I could not wish this on any human being. Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson appear to be two very bigoted human beings. And these were some fairly desperate people, broke, full of hate, criminals, drug dealers. And they see Mathew sitting at the bar, and he's dressed nice, obviously a gay man, not hiding it. Mathew Shepard was open. Well, these two awful human beings see an easy mark, and they come up with a plan on how they're going to rob Mathew Shepard. And they go and sit up next to him at the bar and pretend to be gay. Flirt with him. Hit on him. And the three of them leave together. But it didn't take long for Mathew Shepard to know what kind of danger he was in. Because as I said, these two people were deeply bigoted, more homophobic than I could have ever imagined. And McKinney, once they get Mathew Shepard into their vehicle, pulls out a .357 Magnum and starts beating him with the butt of the gun. It only took one hit and for them to be able to rob Mathew. Just one hit of that gun. But they weren't done. And they drove to the outskirts of town, to an empty field with a fence.
The veteran homicide detective was shocked by the student's condition.
Without a doubt, it's probably one of the most brutal things I think I've witnessed. The skull was crushed in different locations. His brainstem was smashed. The doctor told me that he was not going to survive.
They beat Mathew relentlessly, and Mathew tried to get away. There was blood spatter over a 50-yard range. They beat him senseless over and over again in the head with the butt of that gun. 21 times they hit him in the head just for being a gay man, just for being different.
What's he look like? Like queer? Says queer, dude. Like fag, you know?
Just for not being the human that they were or that they accepted. Henderson held him and McKinney beat him. And then they tied him to a post, to a fence, and left him to die. And he would sit there bleeding, crying, praying for help for 18 hours before that bicyclist happened upon him and got help. Mathew was still alive. He had been there for 18 hours, suffering more than any of us could ever imagine.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died.
Mathew Shepard was a small man. At 21 years old, he was 5'2", 105 pounds. I'm almost 6'5", 250. I'm like two of him. A small man, but a romantic, with the heart of a poet. There's this one instance where Mathew wrote poems and put them in every single mailbox on his street. He saw the good in human beings, not the bad. And he had a bright life ahead of him.
Prior to the Shepard investigation, I was completely and fully homophobic. The word faggot came out of my mouth as easily as I love you did to my children. And it didn't take too long for me to begin to realize that all of the myths and stereotypes that I'd bought into all of my life were just that.
I became obsessed with this story. And as I said, I was changed immediately. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be associated with that. You know, I still didn't understand being gay. Of course I didn't. I'm a heterosexual man. But I couldn't hate it any longer. I didn't want to hate it any longer. I wanted to start seeing them as human beings because this human being should not have had that done to him. Should not have had that torture, that misery done to him just for being gay. I wanted to be a better progressive. I wanted to be a better liberal. I wanted to be a better human being than I was. And I went back to work and I found Matt and I apologized for everything I had ever said to him, every slur, every dig, every snide ass comment. And I begged him for his forgiveness because I did not want to be that hatred.
The most perplexing thing about hate for me is it's a conscious choice. You choose to do that. You learn to do that.
It's not going to stop until we all decide, by the millions, that we aren't going to live in that world anymore.
I made that choice. I made that decision. I changed. And a lot of people changed. The whole country changed. This was the beginning of coming to acceptance. And we still got a long way to go. And I'm going to be talking about that too. But I changed. And if I could do it, anybody can. It is just a simple decision not to hate anymore.
Those few of us who are fortunate enough to know him have always discouraged people from making him out to be a martyr. The important thing about Matt Shepard was he was a person.
Just remember that Matthew was not my gay son. He's my son who happens to be gay.
We're all human beings sharing this life experience together. We are all related through that experience. We all make mistakes. We all want to protect those that we love. Nothing makes us different. And sure, yes, we have mental instabilities. We have mental disease itself. We have cultures that have hated for as long as they have been. But we are changing. And people still have that chance to make that decision to change.
This afternoon I signed into law the Mathew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act.
That was one of Judy's goals. They had told her, we've been trying to get this law passed for 30 years. You'll never get it done. Took her another 10 years, but she got it done.
When Mathew Shepard died, people all over the country, all over the world, began to send not only cards and condolences, but money. And instead of using that money for themselves, Matthew's parents used that money to make change. And they made great change, and our country has made great change. But we still have so far to go. We still have so far to go to get people just to see human beings instead of others.
So, obviously, you don't like gay people.
I really don't hate them, but when they start coming up and stuff like that, then I get pretty aggravated.
Aaron McKinney used the gay panic defense, the gay/trans panic defense during his trial. I have millions of issues with this defense. I have millions of issues with this defense even being a thing. But that's going to be for a future video where I can concentrate on that fully, because it needs to be talked about.
My first reaction was, why wasn't I there? Because I still have this haunting feeling that he was crying for Dad. You know, Dad, help me, help me.
And ultimately, as I went back over this story, researching this video, it took me back there. But it took me back there as I am now, the father of a 9-year-old little girl. And I can't help but think of it Like if she were to become a lesbian and somebody were to do that to her, it fills me with just so much pain that it's still possible today. It's still possible. There are still people out there with this hatred. And we see it on a rise now more than ever. We cannot allow ourselves to go back to the primitive past of fear. We must look to the future to progress. I will never allow hatred around me again. I will forever stand in opposition to that hatred. I will be a human being that fights for human beings. Let's be human together. What's up, guys? If you like my video, hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Share me on your social media. Comment in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button. Watch what's next. Watch what YouTube recommends for you. Tell all your friends how crazy Nakasuchi is. I'll see you soon.